Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
I'm BJ Sewura, an aspiring paranormal musician who plays live for the dead because the living just doesn't want to hear me.
The Dead of Winter Horror Network and It Came from the 508 Productions invite you to endure the most terrifying immersive experience in all of podcasting. Beneath the Red Umbrella, now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Beneath the Red Umbrella, when the snow falls, the killing season begins.
All right.
It's a good start.
It is. I love it. Wine, letters, and dead people. Like,
Yes.
you can't go wrong with that. What's up, ghouls, gals, and metapals? In today's episode, you thought we were going to be diving into the world of prophetic dreams, shadow people, as well as other entities, but really we're going to talk about wine, letters, and dead people. So we have special returning guest, Diana Robertson, owner of Runes and Ravens. Welcome back, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here again.
So excited to have you on. It's never a dull episode when we have you.
Oh, I feel like these are fun all the time. Like there's some things where I'm just like, I kind of dread it. And I'm like, I don't know if, I really want to do this. Like the introvert part comes out. I'm an ambivert, so I have both. But the introvert is like, I don't want to come out from under my rock. But with this, I was like, I'm ready. I like these people.
You're like, husband, be quiet.
They missed that. They'll hear it if you start hearing him screaming at Overwatch or whatever he's playing right now.
I mean, I can relate. The other side of this door, they've got the gaming, and sometimes I hear them, and I don't know if the guys during recording have heard it, but I can hear them screeching at the game, and I'm like, mute myself and like, hush.
One of those things where you just try to smile and just like, shut up!
Yeah.
Like the ventriloquist gift. It's like, I hope that game is strong because I'm about to yell through my teeth.
Yeah.
I do that with my dog. She barks all the time. It's like, oh my God, shut up.
And that's not one you could really put to a stop. They just keep going.
No, they just keep going. Yeah, she does too. She's a pain.
So I love that you're moving into a house shaped like a witch hat. I hope I could talk about that. And it was funny because you mentioned they have the people's pictures that used to live there that are dead now. But the way you said it, dead people's pictures. John acted so shocked when I'm like, oh, are these death photos?
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to the Winchester Mansion, they have a whole room exhibit of death photos that were taken during
They're
that
so
time.
fascinating, though.
Yeah, and like people posed like they're still alive, so seated or, holding a glass of wine or something, and they're legit dead. They've just been posed for these photos for people's families to have so they remember them and, their lively state. I don't know.
It's the original Weekend at Bernie's.
That was a good movie. But it's like, what are they going to do with those? Like, if we did that these days, what would you put them in the position? Like yoga positions, gaming?
Looking at their phone.
Gaming, taking a selfie.
But there might be those photos in the house. There might be in that house. I mean, the things that are in there are amazing. There's, the house was built in 1900. So, like I said, there's letters in there from like the 1920s that I don't know if they've been opened or not. My husband just keeps talking about them and how that's going to be like the first thing he wants to do is sit down with all the letters. But there's like old vintage dolls, like those 3-faced dolls with like the soft bodies and like these
cool.
creepy, like just this creepy like elephant toy that's like sitting in a little carriage in one of the bedrooms. Like, this is really creepy, but I love this. This is going to be amazing.
So you bought this house and they like you get to keep this stuff? Like you're
Yeah,
inheriting it basically?
yeah, right. Like, we're in the process of getting it. So fingers crossed everything continues to, go forward. As of right now, everything's good. And we've gone through like the biggest hurdles. So far so good. But if all goes well, we should be in there before Halloween. So it's gonna be great TikToks.
Nice.
Um,
I want a TikTok live stream walkthrough of this spooky place.
I already have plans. There's just corners in there that every time like we've gone to see it, to kind of, do inspections or whatever, like there's always something new, something different. And the closets are full of stuff. They're like in every room. The kitchen's full of stuff. You have things from like you see things from like the 80s, and again things from the 20s. It's crazy just to see the stuff that they've just. I'm like, did they just collect these like within the family? From what I think they told us that the house stayed in the same family since it was built or something. And I don't know yet what happened to the previous people who lived there because it's an investor owned property right now. So we're buying it from him. That's why everything's still in there. They're like, you deal with all the stuff. And I'm like, I wanna.
You do it.
Please let me deal with all of it.
You're like, I'm getting a deal.
It's gonna be amazing.
One bit of advice: if you read the letters, just don't read the Latin out loud. I've heard that's
Oh, where's your sense of adventure?
We don't want Evil Dead happening here. If anything we've learned from horror movies is stop reading
But I'm
books in
really good with
languages
the
we don't know.
accent.
But you probably know what you're saying. So you know if you're saying, I summon you, evil ancient one.
I can probably recognize which words not to say.
There you go. She's
Kind of
got to
mutter
edit.
it.
I think it still counts.
Hold my breath and maybe mouth it so I don't put my breath into it. Does that does that count?
You're just kind of like lip syncing, lip reading it.
Yeah.
Does it help if you go from Latin to like Pig Latin that changes it up so it's not quite the ritual? I don't know.
Maybe I'm good at that too. Well, I used to be good at that. I used to be able to just read like a sentence and just do it as I was reading it, like within seconds. Like it was just like it was a second language, I was a lonely child.
Oh no. Oh man. Well, this is exciting. I love that you're moving into a spooky haunted house and that you're getting all of these relics to go through and raise the evil dead. We're going to have some deadites come up, and that's exciting. Now, speaking of deadites, tell us about shadow people.
Oh my God, we're going right into it. That
Oh,
was one of
yeah.
my first sort of introductions to there's something else, there's something more. Started when I was a kid, but I think it was around 13 or 14 when things got really serious with that, where I would spend all of my time in my room, just sitting in one spot, just kind of like it's almost like putting up my antennas to notice them, to kind of recognize them, and I guess that kind of turned into sort of like becoming a magnet. So, which I learned it's actually still an active thing when I get into sleep paralysis, and it's funny because I'm like the magnet, and my husband is sort of like he's always had this ability to kind of push things away. Um, and so anytime I start bringing something in for one reason or another, even if he's asleep, like you can tell, like his breathing starts to change. He's like, he starts just kind of, muttering, or like something always happens. And I'm like, oh my God, like he knows, like he can sense it. Something's happening here. But no, it started like when I was a kid. And I just have learned over the years that not all shadow people are necessarily like some sort of proof of, like a true haunting or something. Some of them are just residual energy of an event that happened. And at least from my understanding, when you, especially here in North Carolina, there's a lot of haunted areas by the mountains. They say it's because of the quartz in the mountains, that the quartz absorbs all this energy. And the most haunted places are always like people seeing the same things, the woman in the white dress, the screaming or the door slamming or something. And it's always the same experiences for the same people. And they always come with sort of this peripheral vision of shadow people, of some sort of movement. Or if it doesn't come with that, it's at least that sensation of like a presence. But they say that that's because of whatever event took place has absorbed all that energy, and it's like it's just this constant memory, energetic memory coming off. And that's where you start seeing some of the shadow people. They say is what comes from, or is they're coming from some sort of residual event or some sort of experience that somebody had, whether it's super negative or it even happens around positive situations. It's not necessarily that they're all negative. It's just that they're manifestations of dense, low vibrations, low energy. So it's typically something that's negative tied to them. I feel like I'm rambling. Like I have 5 different thoughts, and I'm like, how do I touch on every one of these and make sense?
I mean, I'm
But
following so far. So
I think that like when I start talking about shadow people on like TikTok or my lives or anything, like somebody's always asking, well, are they demons? And it's like, no, they're, they'll come with the feelings that people immediately assume are demonic. Like the feeling of terror that comes with them, or, the hackles that raise, or the feeling of just uncertainty. But those are all just low vibration emotions. And when there's a shadow person around that's that dense of energy, you're going to feel the emotions that match that energy. And that's why we have the more negative kind of reactions to them. But I've always considered shadow people to be like the deer of the spirit world. They're just kind of there. It's not like they're out trying to scare us, or they're like these knowing beings that are coming and trying to give us messages or something. I think those are other types of spirits that we're getting information from, or that we're having these other kind of experiences from, whether it's an actual spirit of somebody who's passed, or an ancestor or whatever, maybe giving information or something. But generally, shadow people are just there. They're like deer, they're just wandering around.
You said that there was some of it. Sometimes it's residual energy. Sometimes it is actual shadow people, right? So how do we how do we know the difference? How can we really tell?
They this is the way I like to explain it this way, is when they're actual, like the shadow people, not just residual, they do have some sort of interaction. It's not so much like they're coming and throwing stuff around. They're not like poltergeists. But when for example, if you're in sleep paralysis, I don't know if any of you guys struggle with sleep paralysis, and if you have the hypnagogic hallucinations where you see the people wandering around your room, um, if you happen to be one of those that's kind of putting out this kind of energy, and you kind of open your eyes and suddenly you have these faces like right there in your face, which a lot of people get the hag or the hat man, or just faces, like several faces that are right there. I think about it like when you're in sleep paralysis, when you're astral projecting or whatever, you're kind of going into their territory, so you're kind of like a bug on their wall. And in the same way where you're like, say you're in a room with a crowd and suddenly there's a strange bug on the wall and everybody's like, what is that? And everybody's kind of coming close and they're like looking at it because it doesn't belong. It's like that's what we are when we're in the astral world, when we're in sleep paralysis or something, and they're kind of coming to you because they're recognizing there's something else that's not necessarily part of their energy or their realm or dimension or whatever. But that's generally how I've always kind of told the difference. It's like if it's just one that's kind of phasing past you, or you see one standing, in a corner or something, but it's not actively like coming closer to you in any way, then I'm just usually like, okay, that's just a residual thing. It's just something, it's attached to something, or some things maybe happen here, depending on how often, I had the experience or something. But um, yeah, it's generally if it's coming to you or having some sort of interaction, then I'm like, okay, that's like something else.
So one's like on a loop playing for its own self
Yeah.
and what happened, and the other is like looking at you, acknowledging your existence, and however that
Yeah.
however that happens, and that's obviously much scarier to deal with.
Yeah. I remember when I was about 13, and I was raised in a cult, in a very religious cult, and so everything that I was doing, spiritual wise, had to be in secret. Anything, that was not in within the Bible that we were raised on, because it's not the Bible everybody else was raised on, apparently. But I had my first oracle cards, and I was about 13 or 14, and I would, lock my door and spend my time in my room and just play with my oracle cards and kind of use them and test them and whatever. And there was, at that time, I was already very aware of feelings of like shadow people or, different energies around me. And, but particularly shadow people were active in my life at that time. And I remember I was sitting there and I was putting down these cards and I was kind of trying to focus on my questions. And, I was 13 and in the mind of a 13-year-old. But then I got that feeling of like there was somebody there. And again, it's that it comes with that sense of fear. Like even when it's not something that can hurt you, it still comes with that feeling. Your hackles start raising, and you're like, oh God, like something is there. And I looked like down, like at the corner of my eye. Like I mean, I didn't move. I just moved my eyes just to look, and I saw the carpet go down as if somebody was stepping there. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is not like this is not like everything else. This is more. And I didn't move because I didn't want to acknowledge it. And it's just that was one of the things that I was like, how can I say that this is not real? How can I go and say that, there's nothing else out there when I just saw that with my eyes? Like I watched it with my eyes happen. And it eventually, just kind of lifted, the feeling went away. And I looked over slowly over my shoulder. And then it was like, this was before Slender Man existed. So when I saw Slender Man, I freaked out, like in the movies and stuff. But it was like this, 7 foot, 8 foot tall, sort of like humanoid shape. Didn't have a face, and it was just walking across. And it took maybe, I had a pretty big room. It was maybe about this size, my bedroom at the time. And it took maybe 3 strides to get through the whole room. But it was like as it moved, like you could see its arms, like the air between, like its arms as it was moving, and like just kind of looked in my direction and then phased out. And I was just like, that's it. This is gonna be my life now. I can't not believe in this stuff because it was so just it was right there. And then I had a very similar one to that happen just like 2 years ago when we were watching a movie. We were upstairs in this house actually, and we were watching a movie. And I don't have my mind on these things all the time as much as I did as a kid because it's just been regular and part of my life. So it doesn't really like, I don't know, I don't always get a real reaction out of myself when they happen. But we were watching this movie and I thought I saw something move, and I was like, I kind of looked around and I was like, okay, that was just maybe like, my imagination or something flickering in the corner of my eyes for whatever reason. And then like I kept kind of getting this feeling. I'm like, Something's there. Like there is something more here." And I didn't say anything. I just kept watching the movie. And then it was like a shadow like kind of came up, like as if, let's say, my screen here is the TV. It was just up like on this side and kind of like came up this way and then just walked towards the kitchen. And I just sat there, and I know like I had like my hand in the popcorn because I was sitting next to my husband. He was holding popcorn. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of watched it. And I was like, I am tracking this with my eyeballs right now. And I'm like, am I awake? Is this real? Is this happening? Because I am watching it, and it went to the kitchen, disappeared, but then something knocked over. And then everybody was like, oh, what was that? And I'm just like, nobody saw that. Like I'm the only one.
Like
But
just me?
I kind of sat there and I looked at my husband. I was like, do I say something? Do I just leave it? I mean, it's over now. It's not like I can like, what's the point in sharing it when it's gone now? It's not like I could be like, hey guys, look. But which I think is the big thing for people who have these experiences. It's like you can't share these things all the time. You don't feel like sharing them because it's like unless it's happening right there where you can be like, hey, look, hey, let's experience this together. it's just like that one-sided thing where you're like, no, they're just gonna say I'm crazy. They're just gonna, be like, yeah, it's just Diana being Diana again.
Oh my gosh. I love how you said that when you experienced it at a young age, you were like, well, this is my life now. I guess I saw it. I have to believe in it. Because for me, I had so many experiences as a kid and a teenager and even into young adulthood where, like, probably, let's be honest, up until about 3 years ago, I've been actively trying to convince myself it's not real. I refuse to
Yeah.
believe it. And it's like, how much proof do you want, girl?
Yeah.
Because I was afraid of it. I think the podcast has really helped me learn to talk about it, normalize it, and not be afraid.
Yeah.
Which that's big steps for me. Big steps.
Well, that's good. I think that's the whole point of the experience, is to kind of, to be able to recognize it and experience it when it's happening.
Yeah, and I want to revisit what you said about the quartz in the mountains and how that absorbs the energy because, you know, we had a guest talk to us about land sampling. And, like, if you're doing an investigation, you should also sample where you're at to see if, like, what properties are in the minerals, because that may also
Hmm.
be drawing in things. And it made me think about Colorado, where we're at, because a lot of people come here and they're like, oh my gosh, the red rocks are serene and calming and
Hmm.
they feel revitalized and amazed. And so I've been trying to figure out what is it about the red rocks, because I don't think it's a visual, like they are beautiful, but
Hmm.
I do feel like there's something more to it than that, and like this energetic vibration. So I looked into the composition of the red rocks. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I looked into the basic compositions and I noticed that they have a lot of iron, which hence the red. And I know there's a lot of lore out there with iron, that iron wards off negative energy and iron can stabilize energy and kind of neutralize things. And so I wonder you know, if there is a way to start kind of incorporating that when we look at haunted places, when we look at, places where people build altars, because I've always been curious why these spaces, why that spot did they feel drawn to erect this structure or create their circle? Because I feel like people are very intentional. They don't just go to a spot and say, yeah, well, I'm done walking. Let's just put the circle there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, as humans, that we have the ability to sense things and to feel things. I mean, we have just as much, our emotions themselves are energy, and we're constantly putting out these waves, of thoughts, of feelings, and we're constantly taking in energy from everything around us and responding to it, kind of, filtering out the energy or turning it into something else within us. And so, I fully believe that, people will walk into a space or around a space and be like, whoa, like there's suddenly a feeling. And some of it, is, I mean, you can see with, places that are knowingly haunted, that people walk into the same space and they all kind of go, oh, wow, like there's a feeling there. But then, there's other, things. And I know there's here in North Carolina somewhere, I don't know, I know it's by a mountain somewhere, again, where there's something about the magnetic something or other where you put a ball down and it goes upwards instead of falling downwards because the gravity, something's looped there. I can't remember the science behind it, but I know it's here in North Carolina. It's something you can, like, tourists can, drive by to come and see. But it's like, you feel places like that too. Obviously, if you're walking into a space where you're feeling a lot of, like, either static or, magnetic, energy or something. And I think back then people were a little more not intuitive, but a little more aware of themselves. Right now, we're all kind of, living on auto. We're like a, bunch of androids, doing the things that, we're supposed to be doing as a society. But back then, when everybody was a little more present and paying attention to what they were doing or what they were growing or what they were taking care of, I think that people would naturally start, feeling something a little more if they were in a space that had some kind of energy like that. But I know, I know that there's like a lot of I what was it in Salem? I think there was something. I feel so bad for not coming with all my research, but I didn't know what we were talking about. But there's something about
Nobody can fault you. We always shift around conversations. That's what makes
yeah.
this so fun with you.
But there is something about iron in there, and people who are doing, spell work or, witchcraft or something that, would incorporate iron or I think there was when I first moved in here, I had said something about that I woke up in the middle of the night to 3 knocks on the door, just loud pounding on the door. And I like woke up and I was like, what the heck? Like, what was that? And there was no sign that there was anybody around. We had a ring cam on and everything. Like there was nothing there. And people kept bringing up. They're like, "Do you have iron the nails, the railroad,
The stakes, the railroad
yeah,
ties.
those." And I was like, "Well, yeah, actually, like 20 yards that way, there's a railroad." Like, and they have them just buried and sitting around there. The ones that are old that they pull out and they replace, and they just kind of leave them scattered everywhere. And they're people are like, "Oh, because the 3 knocks, are like a big." Sign of, some people say the fae, some people say witchcraft or whatever. Um, and a couple years later, I, was having dreams where it was like I was standing at the, we have 2 trails in the backyard that kind of go off into the woods. And I was standing at one trail of the woods, and in the dream, like I was just like, for some reason, I knew I was there for the fae. The fae wanted me to come there, and I was standing there. There's a white boulder like off to my right, and I was like, well, why here? Which in real life, there's no white boulder there, but it was like marking something there, and I sat there and I was staring at it, and I was like, okay, I'm here. The fae wanted me here, but why am I here? I see the stone here, but what is this supposed to be? Um, I found out a couple years later, those trails are all full of quartz. Like it's just poking out of the ground. If you just like, I could walk with my camera and show you, in the morning, like you can just see all the quartz sticking out of the ground. I was like, well, that's kind of cool. Just found out about with this whole situation with the dam and the sinkhole on the property. Um, the sinkhole was right where the white boulder was in that dream. And I didn't realize that until, they had come to the house. They're like, yeah, this is the problem with the dam, with the property, the sinkhole, we need to come and look at it. I was like, what sinkhole? Like, where's the sinkhole? I've been out there how many times? Um, and then when they showed me it, I mean, I didn't realize it immediately, but I remember standing there doing my dishes. We have like the window that you can see, over the property, and that's where I was just like, "Holy crap! Wait a second! The white stone was right there where the sinkhole is, like sitting like right there." And this was just, like I think it was like a few months or something before everything kind of came out in the open. We realized that we had the whole property, issues and whatever. Um, but that was just like another thing where I was like, wow, like, does this really have something, is there really some tie with the quartz and the energy and the fae, or, whether it's spirits or fae or whatever. But I think it's just things like that. Again, I've just had too many things like that are kind of tying together where I'm like, well, I can't not believe this. Like there's something happening. I don't know all the science behind it. And that's what kills me.
It's interesting you brought up the magnetism too, because the red rocks, I mean, it's high iron concentration, and
Mhm.
iron is super magnetic. So, like, it makes you wonder what's, again, I'm like you, I'm not a scientist, but it does make you wonder, like, is there some kind of magnetic iron energy play going
Mhm.
on? And then, you also have a lot of quartz deposits in the
Yeah.
mountains. So it's just like, I feel like, especially in Colorado, just because I know the state kind of better than other states, is that, it would probably explain or help explain a lot of the activity we see on mountain roads. Like you said,
Mhm.
the lady in white, like there's so many of those reports on mountain roads. And
Yeah.
it's just interesting.
I had a question about that. Like, you're talking about different courts and things like that. Like, do different courts do different things, right? And does that affect like the energies there, right? So I had just gotten back from Scotland a little while ago,
Lucky.
Ah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I have an obsession. Go on.
Do you really? Okay. So yes, I mean it's amazing, but like their big thing is smoky quartz. That's one thing that they're known for. And I was just wondering if that's something that affects the energy there, and obviously the rocks, the cobblestone. There's so many things there that are so old, and I don't know, like for whatever reason I didn't feel like I felt different there, but I didn't feel like what I thought I would. Um but I guess my question is what does the rock matter, or is it more about like the spirits that are there, or is it like a combination?
I'm not like a huge crystal person, so I don't know exactly, but I from what I understand that there are different kinds of quartz that do different things. Like rose quartz is going to be something that's more for like healing or something, but smoky quartz is the kind that does kind of absorb more, which if I remember right, that's the quartz that we also have in North Carolina, and all around the Appalachian Mountains. Which is recently has been kind of going all over the internet that before the continents spread and it was all one landmass, that the Appalachian Mountains were connected to the same ranges in Scotland, that we have the
Hmm.
same stones and or the same minerals and stuff like that, and the same like the mountain ranges used to be whatever connected or something, which kind of makes me wonder now. I'm like, if they have that much smoky quartz and we have all the smoky quartz, like, was that something that's just been there always? What's what can come from that kind of research? I wonder. But
Yeah, I don't know.
I do think there is something about the different types of quartz. I don't know all of them, or I don't really have enough knowledge on the topic to know what I'm talking about or to even fake it.
I mean, it probably has to do with what is more prevalent in the quartz that's combined with the like silicone, right? So, like, you have your base quartz that's going to be in smoky rose and all the other quartzes out there. But the smoky, it's going to have, I think, more aluminum in it. And rose quartz has more like iron and titanium. So then you start to get into the properties of like, what properties do these metals carry that might be making it more beneficial to healing? Because you can look at like spiritual tribes out there that use different metals for healing and for very, I don't want to say medical, but what's the word I'm looking for, more holistic healing methods.
Hmm.
And so I don't think that like crystal healing is that far off that path. It's
Yeah.
utilizing those, I sound like a total nerd, using those different properties that are
Remind
present.
your people.
Using those properties that are more present. So I
Hmm.
don't think one is better than the other. Like, I think, like you're saying, Diana, it's just a matter of what are you trying to do with it.
Yeah.
And so maybe versus looking at crystals as like this woo woo cure all, maybe, taking a look at what are they really made of and
Hmm.
what do those properties do to benefit people? Because then you also hear about like metal poisoning. There is, I feel like, a benefit to talking to like a geologist
Hmm.
to say like, hey, what do you notice in similarities? What are these comprised of? Although everything's on the internet now, so you could always look it
Yeah.
up and see like, what's this made of?
Yeah. I can't. I feel like I can't trust the internet anymore. Like,
Ask a geologist.
yeah.
Ask an
Like,
expert. And obviously with your stuff is you seem to be an expert with the paranormal stuff because you've experienced it your whole life, right? Have you ever, so you said Scotland is one of those places that you would love to go to. Is there a specific place that you would love to go to because of the paranormal?
I guess not because of the paranormal, but because of the this like might sound woo woo, I guess, but it's like a spiritual feeling that I get. Like it's I don't know if you know what hiraeth is.
Mm-mm.
It's the Welsh word that we don't have a word for it in English, but it's like a feeling of homesickness or a feeling of longing or yearning for something that you've never had, somewhere you've never been, someone you've never met. And I've had this feeling. It was actually more towards Ireland growing up. And I'm Romanian. I'm full blood. Like we are ridiculously, if you look at my family line, we're ridiculously like old, old blood Romanian. And it didn't make sense for me to be this obsessed with Ireland growing up as a kid. But I had always felt that feeling, that sense of longing or yearning. And I've never been to Ireland, but there was something about the Moors. Like the Moors, I would see them and I just start crying, like as if like I need to be there. I belong there. That's home to me. And I've never been to Ireland. I never even left America yet. At this point, I was born the day after my parents got to America from Romania, so I'm an anchor baby. But I didn't even get to go, that far overseas or anything. But it's just this feeling of something that's there that I have to go. Like it's something that's calling me. And then, when I grew up and I met my husband, he had a similar a sort of connection or feeling to the Shetland Islands in Scotland. And so, as we were just kind of talking, and as we were get to know each other and, coming closer, we're like, when we got to the point where we were actually together, talking about the future, we're like, yeah, let's go to Scotland then. Like that was the big, that's where we're gonna that's where we're gonna die. I'm gonna die in Scotland. So that's the goal. But it's always just been like at this point, Scotland was sort of like our meet in the middle, because Shetland Islands is the farthest northern islands of Scotland. It's not on the mainland or anything, but we're like, yeah, okay, we'll go to Scotland and we'll put down some roots and whatever. But for me, it was always Ireland or just the Celtic lands, really. But it's something about the Moors, and I know that there's a lot of I guess paranormal and spiritual history around the Moors and all the different markings, all the landmarks that are out there. So anything that's standing stones, the fairy pools, but especially the one place in Scotland that just kind of screams to me every time I see it. God, I can't even remember. Glencoe, the little white house at the base of the mountain in Glencoe. There's something not necessarily about the place, but it's almost like the house is a memory of something. When I see the little cottage, even though it's not like nobody lives in there or anything, but there's something about the Moors and that cottage that it's almost like I don't know, it's almost like a memory of something. But again, I've never been, so I don't really know um, what to say with that, but there is something there about the Celtic beliefs, the Celtic mythologies, the Fae. Again, I grew up very, I guess, just kind of obsessed with Fae, the idea of Fae. And that stopped from about 11 years when I had when I got married to my first husband within the cult, and I had to just kind of shut everything off and be like, I can't actively go, after any of this or delve into it anymore. And so, I kind of felt like I shut that off, but it was like, it was always there still, something about the Fae. But when I had first kind of realized that the religion I was raised in wasn't the only belief system out there, it didn't feel right to me for some reason. There was no reason for me to not be fully indoctrinated in it, but there was something else there that I had always kind of put to an external sort of spirit, whether it was a fae or something else. But when I found out about the Green Man, he's right there is actually my Green Man right there. I have one on each side of my door. But that was where I kind of like when I saw it, it was this feeling of familiarity. And then I found out he was an Irish thing. And that just kind of freaked me out. I was like, what is happening right now? Like I grew up with all this obsession over Ireland with these feelings and these dreams and these experiences where I was just, as a kid convinced that the Fae were real. Not like Tinkerbell, we're talking about like the creepy little bastards that cause trouble and that are just like, they're coming with, with chaos around them and whatever. But and then I had an obsession with trees, the idea that trees, and plant life, have life in them. That the moors in my mind just feel like they're just rivers of life. Just it is alive in every aspect when you look at the moors, and that the green man represents all of that. And I think I was like 10, where I was like, yeah, the trees are living. They can hear us. They listen. I could tell them my secrets. Like, I had more tree friends than I had real friends as a kid. But
Have you done any readings on yourself to see what that association or connection might be?
I've tried. I can never. I think I'm self-sabotaging when I do readings on myself. There was a thing though when I was about 12, and I was with a couple of my friends, and we went into a mall. Um, we're just being mall rats for the day. We walked into this place that was called it's called Sphinx, and it was like it was one of those places where like one wall was all crystals and one wall was like cards and stuff, and the rest of the place was just like things from like Egypt or things from like whatever, all different parts of the world and statues and stuff. And um we walked into one of those, and this lady comes up like from a corner out of nowhere, and she's like, can I do a reading on you? And I was, at that time, I wasn't really yet actively doing readings for myself or anything. I hadn't been dabbling yet. This was like right at the beginning of it all. And she just comes in. She's like, as soon as you walked in, she's like, I feel like I need to do a reading on you. And she, I guess, had a table set up in there that she was, like people were paying to have their readings done. And she's like, I was like 12. She's like, you don't have to pay anything. I just need to see why I have this feeling. I was like, okay. And so we go, and she starts, she pulls out these cards, and one of the cards was she freaked out. She's like, because it looked exactly like me. And she would hold it up to my face, and she's like, this looks just like you. She's like, this is really creepy. And the card was one where she's like, your entire life is going to be about getting across the sea. You are going to devote your life to going overseas, to getting away from here. Which really kicked in once I left that community, was like, I have to leave this place. Like, I need to get overseas. I have to go to Ireland. It was Ireland before, I met Josh. And it was just, I gotta go. Like, I'm gonna die overseas. I can't die here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to live all my experience. There's something there for me. But I didn't remember that was, what this woman had said, that my life was going to revolve around this idea of leaving. And again, that was only like a realization I had a few years ago, really when I kind of came to a place of peace with my past within the church and that whole community. And I stopped hating everybody. And it was just sort of like I started having these last couple years have just been a lot of flashbacks and stuff. And then that, particular one came up, and I was like, holy crap, she was right. Like, all these years has been about me trying to get overseas. But she had said then that I had 3 women that were with me, that were, like behind me, that they each look like me, but they're all redheads. At that time, I was like a strawberry. This is obviously not a natural red, but I was like a strawberry red, strawberry blonde back then. They're like, but their hair is like dark red, and there's like a younger one, like a middle-aged one, and an older one, almost, like the Fates, um, and that they're, they have green eyes, and they're wearing these green dresses. They look very Irish. And I was like, okay, like I'll take that. Like, I didn't understand. I was a kid, And then fast forward to what I think like 2017, we walked into a Comic-Con, and there was this woman who had her mediumship table set up next to us. And I just kind of kept looking over, and I was like, oh, she's doing like ghosty stuff. Like, she's fun. I want to go meet her. And walked up to her, and she just kind of goes, oh, and she's like, you have 3 women with you. She's like, it's really weird because they all look like you. And I was like, you are not the first person who told me this. And then that happened again 2 years later with another medium who was like, you have 3 women. They all look like you, and they're walking behind you. And I'm like, none of you guys are related to each other. None of you guys even know that I know the other one. You don't know each other. Like, this is crazy. But it's all like, they all said the same thing. They have like this sense or this look. Like they come from Ireland. They come from the other side of the world. They're like, who's your Irish family? I'm like, I don't have Irish family. Like my family's genetics are tighter than a fly's anus. Nothing got in. Like we are we are Romanian with like 2% Ukrainian. And that is it. That's my story.
That's amazing. No, I love it. No, I love it. I just
I love that. That's my story.
so these ladies, are they like people maybe from past lives, or are they spirits, or are they people you haven't met yet?
I have come to the conclusion that they are all just like different parts of my higher self. That it's, tied into past lives, tied into the present, tied into just everything all at once. It's just kind of I do deity connections for people. Like I do, readings to kind of help people kind of figure out which deity would work, best for them. And, if they were that type of person that wanted to go and do deity work, I myself don't do that. But, I kind of help people figure out which part of their, which archetype is most active in their life. And that kind of represents a deity. And, I remember doing the fates on someone, and that was like the most like heavy, dense, almost terrifying feeling of having, like past, present, future, like that this energy or this kind of like representation or symbolism of the aspect of time, like right there over my head. And I kind of sat there with that when I was doing it, and I was like, this is very much what my adolescence felt like all the time, like as if this was always here in my life. And I remember telling people when I was younger, I had assumed shadow people were demons because I was raised in a cult and had no other information to go off of. So I had assumed, oh, they're demons. These things that I'm seeing are demons. And I had a lot of people who, when the church had found out that I was having these experiences, asking me, well, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared about, these things that you see? And I'm like, maybe if I hadn't seen them since I was little, maybe I'd be more scared. But it's like, somebody's afraid of clowns and another person's raised with clowns in their family, they're not going to be afraid of them as much. They're going to, recognize why other people don't like it or something, but it's not going to have that same, reaction to them. And I had always thought it was just this feeling, this heaviness, this like dense sense of presence around me all the time growing up, that it kind of took away or almost dampened the feelings of fear around everything. I still got scared about things. I still get scared about things, and, get like the hackles, and kind of have that same response when something, is like, haunting a space or haunting me or something, or having, some kind of paranormal experience. But I feel like something was almost like, when I was younger, it was almost like something was patting that from me. And it was very similar to that feeling of the fates. And so, as I kept hearing these people saying, you have these three women, there's one younger, one middle-aged, and one, like an old version, and they all look like you. I'm like, is this some sort of weird conglomeration of like my higher self and, time itself? Like, what am I? what is this life? But it was just like, I had always felt like something was always there kind of protecting me. And since there's not any reason for me to be like, yeah, it's my ancestors, I don't have Irish ancestors in this lifetime. Like, maybe it's just my higher self. Maybe it's just past lives or something. I don't know, but I had kind of accepted the just different aspects of me as I go, kind of guiding myself along the way.
Now, I would like to take a moment to just emphasize and plug Diana's amazing skills, since she mentioned the deity connection, because I have actually had a deity connection done from Diana. And I've actually had readings done. I am an avid supporter and encourager, because every single reading that I've had done by Diana, whether it be runes or cards or the deity connection, has just been spot on, even if it's uncomfortably spot on. So, like, I know I need to hear that, but I don't want to hear it. How dare you tell me the truth? But yeah, so I just want to say that, especially because you guys know I'm not the most open, for lack of a better word, when it comes to the idea of deities and connection to deities. But every time I would see Diana post about her offering those, something inside of me was just like, you need that one. And I'm like, what? No, why would I need to connect with the deity? I don't think I have authority issues. Like, no. And and I kept resisting. And then I think I was going to do something for the episode, and I went to your page, and the first thing that had popped up for me was deity connection. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, fine, universe, I will do it. So I will say, Diana is super easy to work with. You make it such an easy, calming process where it's just
You.
like, hey, don't sweat it. And, just take what resonates with you. And it's just like, okay, well, every single word resonated with me, whether I liked it or not. And I thought it was funny because when she had sent it to me, I was just like, of course. Of course, I would connect with the queen of the realm of the dead. Of course, I would have to come face to face with this amazing goddess. And and it was interesting because, you do a really good job of breaking down what these things can mean so it's not scary. So it's not
Mhm.
like, oh, you got the goddess of death, you're gonna die. Like it just
Yeah, that's not how it works.
yeah, no, you do a really great job of saying, okay, here's what that means, but here's what I am feeling from that. So I really appreciated that because I still keep it like I have it on my phone. And I still reference it because I feel like that is still actively in play for me. And yeah, sorry. I just had to pause on that for a moment because we have listeners that come in, listen to everything we talk about and our guests. And I'm sure some of them wonder, do we actually utilize the services of people we bring on, and how do we feel about that? And I will say firsthand, like, Diana is one of my go-to's, and
Yeah.
I will always go to her page and be like, okay, I need this reading.
The funny thing about the deity connections is that there's something about those that, like, people some people get really not angry, but like they're very frustrated about the idea of deities, which I understand because I come from a cult, and it's like, okay, well, what's the difference between a whole group of people worshiping one god, and then now I'm out here talking about other people, doing deity work um, with these other gods. But the thing is, like, I've had people who are not spiritual at all, and they'll pick a fight with me in my DMs and be like, look, like, this is stupid, this is insulting, like, how could you be like this, like. And then I talk to them and I'm like, listen, like, when I'm talking about deities, I'm not sitting here like, yeah, Shiva is floating up in the sky above us, or like Hades is under the ground listening to our every word. Like, that's not what it is. Like, I've done deity connections of people who don't believe in deities at all, because I see deity work as it's kind of like a level of shadow work, because deities are representations of the archetypes that we humans, we each carry the 12 archetypes within us. We go through different stages in our life where we're going to be the caretaker, when you're a parent or something, or you're the what do you call it, the oh God, what is the word? Not like the fool, but it's like the young, the young man who's out and adventurous, living his young life. Then, you go through a period where you're a sage, or you're like a teacher or something, depending on the different stages of your life. And when you recognize what archetype is active in your life, that archetype is going to match with, a deity that all the different cultures have recognized. Hey, this is an aspect of humanity. This is something we're dealing with, that we're seeing in the people around us, and they give it a name. They give it, this sort of external, like, okay, there's I want to do an example. Odin is, he's the wanderer, the sage. And they recognize, as men are, getting older, that they have this, point in their life where they start seeing things differently, and they're kind of wandering in their own beliefs and their own understanding of life and what's, happening, what everything is, what's the point of everything, what's the meaning of everything. And that energy is so, it's so prevalent in people's lives and they're going through it. And you see in all the different cultures, people recognize this is like a human aspect. It's a part of being human. And so they give it a name, they give it a face, they give it, this sense of power. And it becomes more of this concept of this external being, this God that they can reach out to. And when I see people who are doing deity work, I don't see it as like, yeah, they're sitting there worshiping, some God that, doesn't exist. It's they're tapping into that archetype within themselves because that's the active energy inside of them at that time. And yeah, maybe they need to put it externally to be able to understand or to be able to process whatever they're going through at that time, and being able to put that focus of like, okay, this is a part of my life that I need help on, that I need a feeling of presence, a feeling of I'm not alone, in this period of my life. They put it into an external concept of a god or an idol or something, but they're able to focus on it and work through that part of their life specifically. And then they're going to eventually get over that, and then they're going to wake up one day, they're going to be in a different period of their life. They're, if they have a kid or something, or suddenly they're in, the caretaker mode, then, if they come and do a deity connection, it's going to be a different deity that's going to pop up in that period of their life for the same reason. That's where their energy is at. That's where their mind and their heart is. And that's what they feel they need to work on. So they're going to have this thing or this idea for them to be able to focus so they can process through that energy. I hope that makes sense. Like,
Well, I like with like what at least what you sent to me, you gave tips of here are things that you can have about your house
mhm.
so it doesn't have to be some idol or statue. Just here's some
Yeah.
things that represent that archetype you can have around to remind you this is what you're working on right now. This is
hmm
what you're going towards. And I do love that you still put it in the person's hands. It's still internal agency because it's like, hey,
Yeah.
a deity has this growth they want for you, or spirit, this evolution, if you will, that they want for you, but they're not going to do it for you. This is
hmm
just hey, this is kind of your wake up call and I'm here with you, but this is still you that has to change. This is still you that has to do the work. And I like that.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, which, maybe some of my regulars wouldn't like to hear this, but when I think about it, that they're doing that work, that by them connecting to that deity, they're connecting to that aspect of themselves. And it's not, like it still can manifest in the emotions or in the feeling of something external, of something being there. But ultimately, I still believe that that's a part of themselves that's manifesting in that way, because that's going to help them process whatever they need to process and get through. And it doesn't make it any less real. I mean, if that's the way a person is experiencing their life and their inner work, by having this external manifestation of something, whether it's, through, seeing something or feeling something, or, a candle exploding on your desk while you're, doing your work, because that happened to me. But,
That's
but it's
terrifying.
like, yeah, it's like things happen because you're messing with energy, you're working with your own energy, you're influencing the space around you, and yeah, things are going to manifest in some way. And some people need that manifestation to be external for them to really be able to process it, while other people, it freaks them out to think, of having an external experience. And so they internalize it, which is not wrong either. I mean, a lot of, the people who, it's funny because they're the ones picking fights in my DMs, but then they end up like, all right, fine, I'm going to do this because I want to see what you're going to say. And I word it in the form of, this is the archetype instead of it's this deity. And I'll give them a list and be like, if you were looking into deity work, or if you believed in, the different mythologies or whatever, this archetype would be represented by this god, this god, this god, and this god. Every single time they would come back and be like, that's interesting because I just, I had a phase with this deity at this part of my life, or something about, one of those deities that I list. They're like, wait a second, like I can see what you're saying now. Like it's not as necessarily as spiritual as it kind of comes off to be when, I'm just making posts on it, online and stuff. So I do get a lot of people just being like, you're a crazy psycho. But when I talk to them and I kind of explain and create that bridge of like, look, the psychology behind the spirituality, and this is the spirituality behind the psychology. I try to give people both, whether they're super spiritual or whether they're super, you know, psychological, you know, not spiritual at all, just to help them make sense so they can understand what it is that I'm even trying to convey to them.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, I'm new to this with you, and I love the idea of the reminders, right? Things that you can set out, because for me, it's, out of sight, out of mind. Like, I'll forget about it, and then I'm back where I was. I'm not making any progress on anything. So there's that part of it that I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like something that everybody should do. But
Yeah.
also, just, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you are. I mean, you're working on yourself, and it almost sounds like, and I don't know if this is right, but it's like you're tapping into your higher self for advice on
Hmm.
things that you are dealing with, because your higher self knows what to do, and your
Yeah.
3D mind needs to just figure it out because it doesn't know how to do it in this world.
Yeah, that's literally almost word for word what I tell people when when we're having the conversation. It's like, um, and when I do past life readings, it's kind of the same conversation. It's like it's all going back to the higher self. Your higher self is like, I like to imagine it like, um, just imagine a big, a big bulb of light of energy. That's, God. It's life. It's the creation of whatever, life all comes from, and we're all kind of like, our higher selves are like the first web that comes off of that is your higher self. And then, from that little, nodule that you are there, your higher self is there, has thousands of little webs of different lifetimes that you live, and ultimately all those, have these little, webs that create. It's almost like, I like to think of our existence, each one of us has like our own tapestry, and our own tapestries, like all of our lifetimes are kind of intertwining and creating this design. But ultimately, all of those lifetimes that we've lived and all of the work that we can do spiritually, we can always pull from the higher self that is tied into that ultimate, whatever source of life, of energy, or whatever. um but that higher self knows everything. It's tied to God. It's our inner God, our own, God selves. And that we can draw on that for information, for direction, for clarity, for presence, for comfort, for whatever. But that's ultimately what it all is. Whether it's deity work or reading cards or anything, it's all going back to the higher self and working with the self, kind of trying to keep you moving forward and growing in some way.
Well, I love the deity connection or archetype connection,
Hmm.
uh, because it also pulls the jumble, like it's like inside we're this knotted yarn mess,
Hmm.
and we've got all these threads tied up, and we're so hyper focused on trying to figure it out. We're like just frantically picking at it, like, where do I start? Because I have so
Hmm.
many things I'm trying to work through: past lives, current life, future life, all the lives. And by pulling that archetype out or that deity connection, it really takes the focus away from the jumbled thread
Hmm.
and just helps you focus on what color of thread, or what, piece of thread is the focus at this moment in time. Because like you said,
Hmm.
that deity is going to change as we go through different life experiences and changes and courses of, different paths. And so I do like that, whatever you want to call it, whether it's a, spiritual connection or it's a psychological, connection, that it is being pulled externally. So it almost forces you to get the ego out of it. Like, you're still going to get
Yeah.
the pushback, like the who do you think you are in the DMs.
Hmm.
But there is an internal truth, because that thread is still connected to that yarn mess inside of us. There is still a truth that's saying, I don't like that, but there's truth to it. I don't
Hmm.
like it, but dang it, she's right.
And that's really what I try to do with all of the readings that I do, is kind of help people see, like, this has to do with this specific situation or this specific, focus that you have your life in. Um, but it's kind of pulling away from that jumble so you can work through it. Um, I started doing these, I just call them the 1111 higher self readings, where it's less about the, little nitty gritty like details of life here, your love life, your career, your whatever, the general things that people, go for readings for. But it's more about, what internal challenges are you going through in this life and why? What resources are you going to have, particularly in this life, to help you get, work through those challenges in this life at this time? Why? What can you pull from people around you to help you, learn your lessons, or to make sure that you're growing on that soul level, and to feel like you're evolving as yourself as you go. What's your soul family going to look like? What can you kind of look for in people to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people, so that you're recognizing who's a catalyst in your life to create a forced change, and who's a support system for you to be able to lean on, in this time, and how can you use that to, your greatest benefit, while not being a douche about it, because that's the other part of being human. But but being able to kind of draw on all these different little webs, and to kind of help somebody decide, okay, this is what I want to do in my life, this is who I want to become. Okay, this is all the information of everything just about life itself, besides the little problems that we have to deal with all the time. And just kind of pulling ourselves out of that, again, that kind of ego state of mind, and focusing a little more on like, okay, what's the big picture of the higher self that I can be moving forward with.
Look here, Diana. I
Mhm.
like to think of me being a douche as just me being an agent of somebody else's growth.
Yes, okay. Touche.
I'm just kidding.
Touche.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
But
Someone's going to
but
take that.
but you're not totally wrong. It's just, as long as it's subconscious, you can't actively be like, I'm going to go and create chaos in someone's life and they're going to hate me, but
But
I'm going
they're
to
going
do
to
it because I'm
grow.
the growth.
I'm just kidding. Oh. And I don't want any listener to take that and be like, ooh, yeah. Like, no, that was a joke. That's bad, bad, naughty, naughty. Don't do that.
Nobody likes that. Catalysts are always accidental. They don't realize they're being catalysts. People can realize they're being a douche and continue to be a douche, but it's not like they're like, I'm going to be a douche for the sake of your growth. It's, I'm going to be a douche because I hate you, or because you did something against me, and there's that negative feeling to it. But
Now, if I go out and I be a douche for the sake of growth, does that like counteract the bad? Is it like I neutralized it because I had good intentions?
I guess that depends on, where does your mind go when the day is over and you're going to sleep.
Just say no. Say no, Ashley. No.
It's humans are too fickle. There's too many moving pieces to be like yes or no.
No, this is great. I love all of this. This is very it just gets me excited, right? Like because we talked to all of these different guests, and it's a lot of it is a lot of it is they're on the same page with a lot of the things that they're saying. And that there's so many connections that I've made through this, that um it just makes me want to know more, right? And just to see things from your perspective, and also just to have these readings, and just to see where can I connect with my higher self a little bit better, because I feel like the the more in tune with your higher self you are, just the happy you are in general, and then the easier everything is.
Yeah, and I don't think people give enough credit to their understanding of the self and how that influences your understanding of the people around you. Because, yeah, life is going to suck sometimes. You're going to have problems. You're going to have, situations that you go through that you're going to have to calculate some, changes or some way to move forward. And it's not going to be fun. But when you're in tune with yourself and you're self aware, it's kind of like, instead of seeing a challenge in front of you and being like, oh my God, like this is awful, everything sucks, you see it and you're like, okay, but I can get through it. I mean, it's going to be a process, but it's just kind of, you see problems from like a point A to point B, instead of like oh crap, there's this daunting thing in front of me to deal with. Like, it kind of changes the way you see problems around you. And when you can kind of handle and filter through your own problems like that and filter through your own internal thinking and be self-aware, you start kind of subconsciously projecting that on other people, and you start understanding why people are the way they are. And you're more accepting of, the douche who's in your DMs yelling at you, because you're like, you can kind of understand where they're coming from and be like, well, whatever, like that's it's where they are. I could give what I can give, and they can, take something from it, or they can continue to be angry and move on. But that's their life path right now. That's their experience that they're having. And it's not my place to come in and be like, your experience is wrong. I'm not in their shoes. I'm not going to suffer the consequences of what they're going through. And I'm not going to reap the benefits of whatever choices or changes they make in their life. That's on them. I can just share my experiences, or keep to myself or whatever. But the more self-aware you are, the easier it becomes to be that way towards other people, because you just, I don't know, it's like you start having more compassion on yourself, and you start kind of giving that compassion to other people, and you just start seeing people in the life experience a lot differently when you're more higher self-focused, rather than, the physical, what we have right here around us all the time.
Well, I think you learn how to take your ego out of it, because when we think that someone is attacking us and it's personal, I mean, that's our ego reacting, and learning to be calm and realize most people's behaviors, most people's actions have nothing to do with who we are. We just happen to be the one caught in their caught in their tornado path. And
Yeah.
even if someone is taking something out on you, oftentimes it has to do with something internally. They're just targeting you. And sometimes I mean, I don't want to say sometimes. We do have the ability and power to remove ourselves from situations, to be like, yeah, that may have nothing to do with me, but I also don't want that around me. That energy does not vibe with my energy. So just that's for me, at least. Sometimes I get in those moments where I can be calm and anything and be like, that has nothing to do with me. And, like you said, understanding that people are like, they are externalizing what they are going through internally. And so just having those moments of like, yeah, that doesn't get to me, but we're human, and that moment of calm doesn't stick around often. That's a constant work.
Yeah, and I learned, I think, what was I think I was in my 20s when it was right around the time when I was leaving the community. And um I've always been hyper focused on being self-aware. It's just that, like, I will go out of my way, like if I have a thought that's like haunting me, a memory, something that I've done, some mistake that I've had, or something that I'm guilty, around, or something. We'll have times in life where these thoughts just keep coming back, and it's like you can't stop thinking about this thing that you did, or this experience that you had that's just haunting. And I learned to take those experiences, because like all of us carry these things like that. But the thing is that so many people in the world right now, they're living with those every single day. They've never processed through it. They just have them always in the back of their minds, and it makes them, be emotional or react, emotionally, whether through anger or, whatever, tears or whatever. But a lot of the reactions or responses, behaviors you get from people towards you, towards us, is influenced by whatever jumble of a mess of their experience or life, experiences that they've had. And I had learned when I was leaving that community that if I could kind of step away and devote, 30 minutes to the memory, to the thing that's haunting me, like the way I do it, I have just kind of made where I'm like, okay, this day, I don't have this, going on in my life. I'm going to go sit in the bath, turn on the music that makes me emotional, because there's music that I can turn on, and I don't know why, but it just makes me want to cry. And I'm not a person that cries. The light just turned off because my husband has the same light, and when he presses the button, it shuts mine off. But anyway, so I'll like go and I'll sit in the tub, play the music that I know will make me emotional, and I will put all of my thought and focus on the thing that hurts me so much, on whatever it is that's haunting me, whatever, experience, whatever it is that I might have said to somebody that just keeps coming back. And I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did this happen? And I'll give that time to the particular memory, which sounds awful because you're letting yourself feel it. But as I sit there and I feel it, I kind of make it more 3D. I'm like, okay, where am I feeling this physically in my body? And I will point to the part, okay, it hurts in my heart because this is, it's something that has heartbroken me, or it hurts in, my gut because this is something that I've carried a lot of shame or anxiety around. Or, it hurts, in the back of my mind because whatever. And I'll literally like put my hand on the part of my body where I'm feeling the emotion to make it physical and be like, this is the physical representation of this memory, of what I'm feeling about this memory, of this experience, this trauma, this whatever. And I will tell myself, after I felt everything, I'll be like, I'll tell myself, in my head or, whispering to myself or whatever, depending on how alone I am. This is the experience. This is why I'm feeling this way. This is the reason behind the emotion. But this experience will not happen again. I've learned my lesson from this experience. I won't go through it again because I've gone through it and this is what I feel about it and everything's okay. It's behind me now. The pain is, behind me. It's just a reminder. This is just a reminder that, this has been my experience and I won't let it happen again. And it's like after taking that time to sit and look at the trauma or whatever it is, that I was, had been haunting me for the time, it's like your brain or your subconscious is like, that's all I wanted. Like I just wanted to look at it a little bit and remind us, that this is there and this was a painful time for us. And, it was an experience and it's part of your story. And then it's like, then it doesn't haunt me anymore so much. And so when I have these, negative reactions from people who are just super reactive in whatever way towards me, whether they are bitter against me, because I left the community or, they think I'm a sinner because I got a divorce or, because I have fake red hair, like whatever these people are thinking, like they throw so much anger and hatred. Like I'm constantly reminded that these people never sit with their feelings. They never sit with their experiences and everything that they're going through is filtered through this negativity that's constantly they're going to bed with anxiety. They're waking up with anxiety. They're, having these experiences of constantly being reminded of what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong, instead of being able to just feel the feelings and take the next step in life and move on. And I've learned to do that. And so it's not like I just don't respond, I guess, to people who are that way towards me. Or I don't hold this bitterness or this anger or judgment or whatever towards them because I'm like, okay, who knows? Maybe they're having that big jumble behind them. I can't know. And it doesn't matter. It's not affecting my life, what they're reacting like. It's not my responsibility to, try to figure out why are you behaving this way? Unless they're coming to me to ask for help, but they're not. They're mad. So
That's exactly right. Like it's not your responsibility. And I feel like oftentimes we are conditioned, especially those who were raised in any kind of, religious community, we are conditioned to take everything on as a
mhm.
responsibility. And, you're called selfish, you're called so many things if you don't take on abuse and you don't take on, completely like unidentifiable rage from other people. It's like, well, that's your responsibility. Respect your elders, respect your, you can go on. And it's like, it is absolutely empowering and okay and not selfish to say that is not my responsibility. Your
Yeah.
mental health, your emotional health, your like all of that, that is not my responsibility. Even if someone comes to you and says, will you help me? It is still a choice to
Mhm.
say with love, that's not something I can take on. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times people don't know how to have that boundary and say, that is not my responsibility. You can say it
Yeah.
in a kind way.
Yeah. And the thing is that most people who go and try to put that on you and be like, this is your responsibility to behave this way or be this way, or, you can't do that to them back. It's not something that they'll accept back. They'll put it on you, but they're not going to take the same kind of response or words or anything. That hit me when before I had finally left, and somebody had called me just to rip into me about how wrong I was, how awful I was, how embarrassing I was to the family, that, I had shamed everybody, and that how dare, I'm moving in this direction in my life, and, what kind of world are you living in? This was a lot of what I was getting. But I had realized that these people, like, they would never, if they made a choice to go and do something for themselves, and if I had anything to say about it, they'd be like, I don't care what you have to say. Like, this is my life. This is what I'm doing. And
Mind
they
your
had
business.
that attitude too. And it's like I could never have an opinion or say anything. But if I was doing something with my own life, oh, I was suddenly a shame. I was the trouble in their life. And I just remember being like, my purpose in life is not to make your life comfortable. Like, I have my own experiences, my own life that I want to live. My entire life I've been a caretaker. Like, I'm moving on to do something else, to be someone that has been waiting for me to be to be that person, and I'm not going to just make everybody comfortable anymore. But that's what it came down to, was that I had an entire community of people who my sole existence was to make them comfortable, was to be there for them when they needed, money, when they needed a ride, when they needed prayer, when they needed anything. Was that I was just an expected sprinkle that they could just put on top of their problem to always be there. And if I wasn't on call for whatever reason, then it was a problem. And so when I decided to go, it was like, wait, what? You're not going to be on call for us? How dare you? It's like, you guys literally told me you would rather see a woman dead at the hands of her husband than to go and, have a divorce. Because why? Because it makes your church look bad. Like, that's
And they were going to be angry regardless. Like,
oh yeah.
anger is a secondary emotion to whatever else they may be feeling. So, as angry as they are at you for divorcing, I guarantee you most of them were unhappy and uncomfortable in their own spaces. And there was a sense of envy that you are breaking away from that. You are not going to live that, paradigm and be in that state of unpleasantness with them.
Yeah, which that came out with a couple women where they had essentially come out and said that they can't get out of this life. How dare I go and do it? It's
How dare you be empowered?
like what
Shame.
the only thing stopping every woman in that community was losing their support system, and everybody feeling like they can't function because we're not allowed to go to college, we weren't allowed to have jobs, we weren't allowed to do anything but be home and have babies. Like, that was the point. And so they're like, well, they can't go because if they leave, the church is going to turn their back on them, their families are going to turn their backs on them, and they don't have work experience. They're going to have their children taken away, or they're going to have, they're going to be homeless. It's just a lot of that fear. And ultimately it came down to, I don't know, my lack of indoctrination, I guess. I was like, just because they want me to believe that I will fail and live an awful life doesn't mean that I'm going to. I am fully capable of doing something and making change. It's funny. I just my daughter and I, we've been watching Once Upon a Time, the old, from like whatever 2013 or something. And there's like Cinderella talking to Rumpelstiltskin, and she's like, "Look at my life. My life is a wretch." And he's like, "Well, change it." And I'm like, that right there is like, that was like the mindset that I had leaving, was like, my life was a wretch, and it just came to, oh, well, I guess I have to change it. Nobody's going to help me. Everybody's going to leave me. I'm going to be alone, but but I can change my life. I'm the only one stopping me, and that's really what it came down to. It was just, I just remembered because it was on today's episode we watched, and I was like, hey, that's why that struck so hard.
Serendipity.
I think it's great that, I mean, obviously, if you didn't leave, you wouldn't have been able to help out all the people that you're helping out and do all the work that you're doing, right? Like,
Hmm.
and that's more telling than really anything out there, right? And
Yeah.
connecting with your higher self, you probably wouldn't have been able to do any of that if you would have stayed, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely. We weren't allowed to do anything in that community. I mean, just yeah, like you would get in trouble for spending too much time grocery shopping because what do you mean you're supposed to be in the house? Like you're in these walls. This is where you're supposed to be. You can't go and talk to people and what do you mean American friends? Like you have your church people. This is all you need. And I mean it was all of it was ridiculous. When I was 22 was when I realized on Twitter that I couldn't have a normal conversation with a typical, society. I couldn't I couldn't communicate with anybody because the things that I would say or the way that I would say them would always come across wrong because I was raised in such a
Bubble.
bubble. I mean,
Yeah.
and it was like everything that I said would come across wrong, and I'd have people messaging me because I was so naive, I was so sheltered, and had no idea what was going on or what words actually meant things because they were used differently within the community. And I remember being on Twitter and just, I don't remember what I was putting out. It was like at the beginning of my Twitter days where I was stepping outside of the community. I was being a sinner. And
Ooh,
I
rebel.
was like, I was trying to push out my first book, the very first book I'd ever written. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a social person. I'm going to go talk to, the people and, spread the word of this book, that I had written. And, I started getting DMs with like, you don't want to say this out loud. Don't say it this way. I know what you're trying to say, but you can't say it this way. You can't be this way. Or, just kind of telling me that something's coming across completely wrong. And I just remember closing my laptop and I broke down crying. Like I
Mm.
was just like, this is awful. I can't talk to people who aren't in my community because I can't say anything right. Everything that I say is twisted in some way. Or I think my biggest frustration was that when you're a very naive church girl, you can say the most honest thing or whatever, and somebody will always turn it into something in the gutter, something dirty. And it's like your mind doesn't even go there when you're that kind of person. Like you don't have the conceptualization of things that are like overly sexualized in today's world. So I'd say like the most simple thing, and people would come and be like, "Don't say that. Take that down." I'm like, "What do you mean? This is what I was saying." They're like, "I know what you're saying, but take it down. This is not what you want to say. This is not what you want to be seen as on the internet." And I'm just like, I don't even understand what I'm doing wrong. But that was one of those times where I was like, when I was having kids, my kids were young at the time, and I'm like, I have to do better than what my family, my community did, because this is bad to be in my 20s and just not be able to talk to anybody. It was just a very, very lonely, humbling experience.
And look at you now. You're running like all of these social media communities and building support groups for people on Facebook and Instagram and all the places. So you've come a long way.
I had to shut down the everybody's a good person mentality, because that's what I came out into the world with. Was everybody's a good person. Everybody's trying to do the right thing. What's a scammer? what
Oh
do you,
gosh.
what is
What's a scammer?
cheated? What do you mean?
People wouldn't do that. So now, last time we spoke to you, you were offering readings on, I believe it was Etsy. Is
Yeah.
that where your readings are still housed?
Yeah, it just makes sense to stay there, even though they've raised like their fees ridiculously. So at this point, I just keep telling people, I'm like, if you don't want to go through Etsy and you just go through like a PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, or something, just take off $5, because I've had to add consistently more dollars to every listing just to cover the fees for Etsy. And but that's the main place. It's just runesandravens.etsy.com.
And BJ's gonna go do some. I can already tell it's on his.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot, right? So many
I'd
things
be
you can
happy
get
to.
into.
You're gonna be working through a lot. No, I'm kidding, BJ. I'm kidding. Just kidding.
Well, I did just want to say one last
It's a
thing.
joke.
I know, right? You got jokes.
I got jokes.
Yes. But the whole Scotland thing we had talked about, just about, feeling at home, that longing. And I definitely had a feeling of deja vu that I had been there when I first got there. It was
Hmm.
so amazing, and it, like you, it felt like I was being called there. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, and I hope that you have those same experiences.
Yeah, my best friend growing up, we're still besties now. We went on very different paths. I did the family life, from 19, and she's been traveling, she's been doing everything, and so she always tells me, she's like, she wishes that she could be there when I go to Scotland for the first time, because she's like, as soon as I touched foot out of the airplane, she's like, or out of the airport, she's like, you feel everything that we've talked about growing up. Like, she's like, it's exactly like what she thought it was going to be, which I know you had said that it wasn't, exactly what you were, thinking it might have been or something, but um, I know that she had said that it was exactly as me and her have always talked about, really about Ireland being, really it was just Celtic, anything Celtic for us. And she had said that it was going to be very much like that. Like, you get there and you understand suddenly why you're there, and you feel that sense of like, yeah, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Um, she had said that she's never ugly cried so bad as she did whenever she's flying away from Scotland to go back. And I'm like, yep, that's maybe that's why the universe hasn't allowed me to go, because if I go, I'm not going to want to come back, and I still have kids that I'm raising, so I
Oh
can't
yeah.
take them with me. So
I'm still searching for my rainforest.
oh.
There's something. I went to Puerto Rico, I went into the rainforest, and something in me clicked. And
Mhm.
it was like home, but not quite, like almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And so part of me wants to start like exploring different rainforests to see if there's one that's like, this is
like
this
the
is it.
memory of a
This is the
memory.
one. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like it triggered exactly a memory of a memory. And I'm like, I'm still gonna hunt it down. I'll find it. And then one day you'll all
Oh,
get a text message that says, I found the rainforest.
that's how I feel about the Moors. I'm like, so, I remember somebody online had said something about, uh they said something about the Moors being gross or something, and I'm like, why? Like, because it might squish between your toes? Because I'm gonna be barefoot. Like, I will wander the Moors barefoot in the rain, in the cold. Like, I have to have the experience, but it's just something about the Moors. I can't, and I imagine that's what you're talking about with the jungle, rainforest, not the jungle.
So do we have any final thoughts before we wrap this awesome episode up?
Just one last thing. I just want to say thank you. Obviously, like it's great getting to know you. I know that you've been on before, but I haven't been able to take part in this. This is great. Um,
Feelings mutual.
yeah, just kind of a weird connection with Scotland and Ireland that we had. And I do want to say that when I said that I didn't feel the connection, I when you feel that when you're there, you feel like you're there. What
Yeah.
mine was more is that I didn't feel paranormal stuff. It wasn't
Oh,
that.
okay.
It was more
Yeah.
that. But the feeling of Scotland and Ireland, when you are there, you know you are there and you love
Mhm.
it because it doesn't. Yeah, it's just it has its own unique like sensibility and just the music and the air and the yeah, all of that.
Yeah. I had a conversation about that recently in this a Discord that I'm in, where they were just talking about like whatever other parts of the world, and um I had asked, I was like, because I haven't actually been into another part of the world like that with a different culture, and history and whatever. I'm like, does the air feel different? Like, when you get there, do you feel it in the air? Like, do you feel it on your skin and just in your being? Everybody says that, yeah, that is the case. Like, I cannot wait. that's that's my next thing on my bucket list, is just to be able to feel that sense of getting out of this muck that I've been in for so long and put into something else, into this new. It's like being a fish in a new pond.
This muck is just fertilizer for your beautiful
That's right.
flower in Ireland, Scotland, both.
Either, or
Skyerland.
although probably Ireland, because I have EU citizenship by descent. So
There you go.
I could move there whenever things are ready.
And your next book can be called From the Muck to the Moors.
Oh. Yeah, that'll
Yay!
my first nonfiction.
Well, Miss Diana, if people want to reach out to you or connect with you, are you open to that? And if so, where can they find you?
Yes, of course. At Facebook, Runes and Ravens. I now have the blue check mark next to my Runes and Ravens name. So
Yay!
that's the main place to find me. I am Diana Robertson on Facebook too, which no longer has the blue check because I don't need it there now that I have it on Runes and Ravens.
Awesome. Well, we all appreciate you coming on. It's always a fun conversation with you, and I'm sure we could go even longer, but it's later where you're at. So
Yeah.
would love to have you on again and again and again. You know that.
I would happily come back. I get excited whenever you reach out. I'm like, yes, I could do this again.
I'm like, Diana. It's like Marco Polo. Although it's not very hard to find you. I'm kidding.
No, I'm loud. I'm really bright.
And you're very responsive. I love our interactions, and I do truly adore the conversations that we have with you. They are easy. They're fun. We go light, dark, deep, shallow. We go everywhere, and I love it. All right, John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
Okay, again, thank you, Diana. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yes, can't wait till you come back. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm BJ Seura.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all our social media. You don't want to miss amazing guests like Miss Diana here.
Also, don't forget to check out 3hauntedpodcast.com where you'll find all of our past and current season episodes, as well as guest information and all kinds of awesome merch.
Until next time.